Hey guys, tonight we're stepping straight into the powdered, twitchy, and slightly sweaty world of London's cocaine epidemic of the 1800s. You heard that right. Not the Roaring Twenties, not the Disco 70s. No, tonight you're falling asleep to the gentle sound of Victorian gentlemen snorting lines off their monocles and society ladies giggling their way through high tea with pupils the size of dinner plates. So before you get comfortably numb, do me a favor. Hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me what the weirdest thing you've ever put in your tea, island. But only if you actually enjoy these midnight history comas I cook up for you. Don't do it out of guilt. Queen Victoria wouldn't have approved. Now, dim those lights, maybe turn on a fan for some background white noise, and snuggle into your sheets. If you hear the faint sound of a horse-drawn carriage rattling down your street, don't worry. That's just your neighbor door-dashing laudanum. Settle in. Let's get curious for a second. Have you ever wondered what it actually felt like to be the average Londoner in the middle of the 1800s cocaine craze? Did everyone really walk around with mysterious powder on their mustaches? How did doctors get away with prescribing medicinal speedballs to children? What was it like to wake up and realize your pharmacist just handed you a bottle of cough syrup that could sedate an elephant or launch you into orbit? Could you survive a day in a city where every apothecary doubled as a rave? Every socialite was one misprescription away from believing they were Napoleon, and the local dentist recommended just a pinch of this for toothache, heartbreak, or existential dread. Would you make it through afternoon tea without accidentally ingesting something that would get you arrested today? Or would you start seeing pink elephants and confess your love to a potted plant in Hyde Park? Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1884. London is foggy, anxious, and buzzing with the energy of 10,000 caffeinated squirrels. Your pockets are full of shillings, your head is pounding, and you're about to learn what Victorian remedy really means. Good luck. The day starts with a blast, literally. You fumble for the tin of cocaine-laced snuff on your nightstand because breakfast is for the weak and oatmeal is strictly for sober people. You toss back a coffee so strong it could be used to clean ship hulls, then sprinkle a pinch of medicinal powder under your nose. Suddenly, you're awake, jittery, and ready to face the industrialized chaos of London or fight a lamppost, whichever comes first. Welcome to 1880s London, where the average morning makes your office's Monday huddles look like a yoga retreat. The air is thick with fog, soot, and possibility. The neighbor's rooster crows at half speed, but you, on the other hand, are vibrating at a frequency only dogs can hear. You reach for your dressing gown and nearly leap out the window, not from existential dread, but because you momentarily forget how doorknobs work at this velocity. Before the sun even peeks through the coal-dusted curtains, you've already completed what would now be classified as a week's worth of productivity. You've written a 3-page letter to your aunt, reorganized your sock drawer by emotional significance, and read the Times cover to cover while giving the paperboy unsolicited advice about manifesting success. You haven't eaten, but you've solved at least 4 of your personal crises before breakfast. The coffee? Let's talk about the coffee. Forget pour-over or cold brew. This is Victorian rocket fuel, a bracing, burnt concoction boiled until it's almost chewable, sloshed into a mug that tastes faintly of yesterday's beef broth. You sip, grimace, and contemplate whether your tongue will ever forgive you, but it does the trick. The combination of caffeine and cocaine has your brain galloping ahead of your body, which is currently doing jumping jacks in a woolen nightshirt. But the centerpiece of the Victorian morning is the snuff. Every respectable household has a little ornate box filled with a brownish powder so potent it makes modern energy drinks look like herbal tea. The etiquette is simple. Tap out a mound, sniff delicately, and try not to sneeze your eyebrows off. Invigorating, you declare, as your nostrils burn and your thoughts attempt to rewrite the Magna Carta. There's no time for a slow start. You have a schedule to overthink. Your spouse, if you have one, has already poured themselves a generous helping of nervous tonic a breakfast beverage prescribed by the family doctor for mild constitution. The children, off to school with little flasks of health elixir tucked in their satchels. The dog? Honestly, you're not sure what the dog's on, but it just recited Shakespeare and asked for more bacon. Out on the street, you're not alone. Every neighbor, shopkeeper, and lamplighter is operating at full tilt. The postman sprints by on a mission, the milkman delivers at a jog, and the local grocer's eyes haven't blinked since last Tuesday. Everyone's on edge, full of energy, and just slightly out of sync with the space-time continuum. You'd think it was mass hysteria, but it's just a city-wide case of doctor's orders. And then there's the motivational talk, the great British tradition of the pep chat. You stand in front of your cloudy mirror, adjust your collar, and recite your daily affirmations. I am the master of my fate, the captain of my caffeine. It's less about manifesting greatness and more about convincing yourself you're not about to run into the street and direct traffic with jazz hands. Breakfast, if it happens at all, is an afterthought. Maybe a hunk of bread, maybe nothing. Who needs food when you have enough stimulants in your system to power a paddle steamer? You make a mental note to eat later, but the list is getting long, and your attention span is now roughly 3 seconds. Outside, the city clangs awake. Horses whinny, newsboys holler, and somewhere a distant foghorn signals the start of another round in the never-ending game called Victorian Progress. You're already part of the action, heart racing, brain buzzing, ready for anything or, at minimum, prepared to mispronounce phrenology in polite company. So, congratulations, you've survived the morning ritual. You are fully Victorian. Polite, punctual, and positively electrified. The world is yours. Or at least, the next 3 hours are, until the crash hits and you realize you never did have that oatmeal after all. Step inside the local apothecary, where shelves overflow with invigorating powders, patent medicines, and remedies that could, technically, stop your heart. The pharmacist's moustache twitches suspiciously as he slides you a bottle labeled Dr. Feelgood's Elixir for cough, lethargy, and basically everything. You hand over a shilling and pray the label isn't lying this time. Welcome to the Wild West of Victorian healthcare, where every ailment has a solution, and every solution comes with at least 3 side effects and a small chance of mild euphoria. The moment you cross the creaking wooden threshold, your senses are assaulted by the sharp tang of camphor, the comforting sweetness of licorice root, and something vaguely chemical that reminds you of your cousin's unfortunate fireworks accident. The shelves are a history book of hope and reckless optimism. Bottles, tins, and jars are stacked to the ceiling, each one more suspicious than the last. Brain Reviver, Professor Puddleby's restorative drops, Mrs. McGill's lively liver lozenges. It's hard to tell if you've wandered into a pharmacy or a small-town carnival booth. Every label promises miracles, eternal youth, hair like a stallion, nerves of steel, and the ability to do complex math after midnight. Behind the counter, the pharmacist is a man of mystery and whiskers. His coat is slightly stained, his spectacles fogged, and his eyes glint with the knowledge of 17 different kinds of tincture and not a single actual medical degree. He measures out powders with the solemnity of a high priest, careful not to spill the good stuff. Sometimes he'll throw in a wink or a whispered "this batch is especially lively," which is both exciting and profoundly unsettling. You peruse the display cases, where every remedy has a backstory. Need a pick-me-up? There's a cordial for that. Can't sleep? Try Nightmare Neutralizer. Contains only a hint of opium. Back pain? Pour yourself a spoonful of Old Blighty's bone balm and see what happens. There's a treatment for gout, a syrup for delicate female troubles, and a paste for masculine deficiencies that glows in the dark. For children, the offerings are just as wild. Teething syrup, cough drops, and infant pacifiers, all guaranteed to keep the kids quiet, sometimes for days. If you ask for medical advice, the pharmacist will lean in and lower his voice, launching into a rapid-fire consultation that includes a nod toward the weather, a subtle plug for his homemade ointment, and a dire warning about the dangers of unregulated garlic consumption. He'll prescribe you a powder for your nerves, a tonic for your lungs, and a syrup for general malaise, all while scribbling something illegible in his dusty ledger. You hand over a shilling and receive a small mountain of packets, bottles, and lozenges, each with instructions that range from 1 drop daily to take as needed but never after dark. You try not to wonder why so many bottles have a tiny skull and crossbones stamped on the back, or why the pharmacist refuses to make eye contact when you ask if any of these remedies are technically legal. On your way out, you spot the traveling remedy men, peddlers who hawk their wares from horse-drawn carts on the street corner. They yell out the benefits of snake oil, good for what ails you, in accents from everywhere and nowhere. Sometimes, if you listen closely, you'll hear a story about someone who took the wrong tonic and spent a week believing they were a turnip. No refunds, obviously. Modern life may have its own questionable supplements and miracle cleanses, but in Victorian London, the entire health system was one enormous experiment. And you were the guinea pig. The upside? Hope was everywhere. The downside? So was mercury. So you clutch your bag of dubious medicine, step back into the smoggy London street, and wonder if you've just extended your life or accidentally signed up for a brief, high-velocity adventure into the unknown. Either way, you're part of the grand tradition, trusting a mustachioed stranger with your health and hoping that, by morning, you'll still remember your own name. Welcome to the parlor, where the only thing more dazzling than the silverware is the host's unblinking stare. Society ladies slip refreshers into their lemonades, while gentlemen debate parliamentary reform at 200 words per minute. The most popular party trick? Guessing who's actually seeing the room spin and who's just naturally like that. Step carefully across the marble tiles, past the plush settees, and into a world where decorum is a mask, barely holding back the collective energy of a room full of well-dressed adrenaline junkies. The air smells of roses, cigars, and the unmistakable undertone of tonic. The orchestra in the corner plays a waltz at twice the normal speed, and the potted palms are leaning away from the crowd, as if worried about being swept into an impromptu debate on agricultural tariffs. It's a truth universally acknowledged, at least in 1880s London, that no upper-class gathering is complete without a generous serving of restorative powders. The host, Lord Bellington, wears a boutonniere and a manic smile, welcoming you with a handshake that feels suspiciously like a hummingbird landing on your wrist. The drinks tray offers champagne, wine, and a pitcher of lemonade that's more medicinal than citrus. A discreet bowl of sugar cubes sits nearby, each one possibly infused with enough coca to startle a small horse. The conversation is relentless. Lady Fenwick, in pearls and lace, leans over to whisper the latest scandal. Except she's whispering so fast you only catch every other word. Lord Cranford is arguing for monetary reform, waving his monocle and gesticulating so wildly that the chandelier starts to sway in sympathy. Everyone has an opinion and, more dangerously, the energy to voice all of them, all at once. It's less a debate and more a verbal stampede. You take a sip of society punch and feel your pulse sink with the rhythm of the furniture. Across the room, a young baronet is reciting Latin poetry from memory while balancing on one foot. The dowager countess beside him is nodding, not because she understands, but because her heart is currently beating in Morse code. Somewhere in the corner, a poodle is eating cake, and nobody remembers who owns it. The refreshers are everywhere, mixed into tea, dissolved in sherry, hidden in elegantly monogrammed vials in embroidered handbags. When the party's energy starts to flag, the footman glides through with a tray of little blue bottles. For gentle revitalization, he murmurs, and suddenly the entire bridge club is wide awake and ready to discuss the finer points of railway investments. Even the cat looks suspiciously alert, But it's not all polite conversation. With everyone running a little too hot, emotions tend to rise. A heated debate over the Irish question devolves into a spontaneous foot race down the gallery, lace skirts and tails flying. A game of charades turns aggressive, with one uncle performing Napoleon's defeat so passionately he almost sets the curtains on fire. You realize that nobody is entirely sure where the line is between social grace and socially sanctioned mania. The truth is, high society in Victorian London ran on more than privilege and good breeding. It ran on chemistry. Every soirée, every afternoon tea, every dignified salon was a thinly veiled excuse to keep the collective energy buzzing long after midnight and well past common sense. As you lean back and observe the grand spectacle, faces flushed, laughter echoing, 100 ideas flying faster than reason, you wonder if anyone in the room remembers what it's like to feel tired. Eventually, the musicians tire out, or possibly just give up, and the last guest is escorted to their carriage with a polite smile and a discreet packet of bedtime tonic, just a little something to ensure they'll be ready for tomorrow's fox hunt, book club, or political riot. You step back into the cool London night, ears ringing, mind spinning, and realize that in this world, exhaustion is simply not allowed. Not when there's always another remedy on the tray, another secret recipe passed down from generations of wide-eyed, slightly manic ancestors. High society? Try high velocity. You're just lucky to have made it out with your dignity and most of your heartbeats intact. If you thought modern parenting was stressful, try keeping a straight face as your child's teething syrup contains more cocaine than a Rolling Stones tour bus. It's perfectly safe, says the doctor, as your toddler does laps around the dining room table at supersonic speed. You sigh, realizing nap time now comes with a side of existential dread. Let's set the scene. You're a parent in 1886, a time before child-proof caps, nutrition labels, or even the basic concept that some things are not food. Breakfast is porridge, milk, and a spoonful of infant soother. A syrupy blend of opium, alcohol, and a little bit of South American magic. The result? Junior goes from fussy to philosophical in about 5 seconds flat. The family dog, once known for napping, now hides under the settee whenever he hears the medicine cabinet creak open. Your Victorian nursery looks innocent enough. There are wooden toys, a rocking horse, a single, very stern nanny, and a faded copy of Mother Goose. But look closer, and you'll find the telltale signs of the era's parenting style. Little glass bottles labeled soothing syrup, nerve drops, and calming cordial. Each promises a peaceful child, and, by extension, a moment's peace for you. The fine print may also cause cartwheels, temporary omniscience, and a deep suspicion of doorknobs. Discipline, as the Victorians saw it, meant keeping your offspring upright, silent, and, if possible, not chewing on the furniture. Modern tantrums are nothing compared to a child fueled by what amounts to a liquid 8-ball. You try to correct bad behavior, but honestly, you're just glad they're not levitating. The family physician is no help. Perfectly normal, he declares, as your 3-year-old recites the Latin alphabet backwards and invents a new form of jazz tap. The average playdate is a scene of glorious chaos. The neighbors' children arrive, their pupils already wide as saucers, clutching dolls, wooden blocks, and half-remembered conspiracy theories. Hide and seek becomes a full-contact sport. Tag is rebranded as high-speed pursuit. The only way to calm the mob is by threatening an impromptu spelling bee or reading from the family Bible, which, in Victorian times, was the equivalent of instant sedation. You try to enforce quiet time, but the odds are not in your favor. Some parents attempt to tire out their children with brisk walks or calisthenics, which is just a fancy way of saying run in a circle until you forget why you're angry. Nap time is a game of chance. Will they finally collapse into sleep, or will they invent calculus before you've had your tea? You're never quite sure. Then comes the dreaded cold or cough. Modern parents reach for tissue and rest. You reach for a bottle of Dr. Flapdoodle's miracle elixir. 1 teaspoon and your little one's cough disappears, along with any need for bedtime stories or lampshades. By the 3rd day of treatment, your child has constructed a model of St. Paul's Cathedral out of biscuits and now insists on being called Archibald. Family outings are equally unpredictable. You visit the park, hoping for fresh air, only to find the other parents all eyeing each other's medicine bottles with competitive suspicion. The healthiest child is the one with the least grass stains and the most prescriptions. You push the pram, exchange pleasantries, and wonder if anyone's children have ever simply sat down. In the end, you do what all parents have always done. Your best with what you've got. You keep your little bottles in the cupboard, rationing doses, and hoping the next medical breakthrough involves vegetables. Sometimes you worry, but the Victorians are nothing if not optimistic. They'll grow out of it, you tell yourself, as your child climbs the banister, recites a poem, and asks about the heat death of the universe, all before lunch. Victorian parenting wasn't easy. It was part improvisation, part hope, and mostly a wild, medicated dash from sunrise to sunset. At least you could always count on one thing. Whatever today brought, there was always another remedy waiting on the shelf. And if that failed, well, there was always tea. It's off to work you go, by which I mean you sprint down the cobbled streets like you're late for a Victorian CrossFit class. Bosses hand out tonic pick-me-ups instead of bonuses. Paperwork is done in record time, but your handwriting looks like a spider had a panic attack. The office cat is also suspiciously awake. Let's set the scene. The London morning fog is just lifting, and every shop, warehouse, and counting house is already buzzing with a peculiar kind of nervous energy. Men in waistcoats barrel through the door, cheeks flushed, muttering about mergers and the new shipment from Peru. The sound of shuffling papers is a steady thunder. Someone sneezes, half the staff ducks, the other half asks if they can have what he's having. You settle at your desk, a rickety wooden affair stacked high with ledgers, receipts, and half-written letters. The boss emerges from his office like a caffeinated groundhog, clutching a tray of mysterious blue bottles. For morale, he bellows, and everyone scrambles to claim their elixir, which is mostly equal parts sugar, hope, and a hearty dose of pharmaceutical optimism. Within minutes, the place transforms into an assembly line of unfiltered enthusiasm. The secretary types 70 words a minute, pausing only to giggle uncontrollably and retie her hair ribbon for the 6th time. The junior clerk is updating the company accounts and possibly inventing double-entry bookkeeping as a performance art. You, meanwhile, are halfway through a report you don't remember starting. You wonder if you'll finish it, or if it will just finish you. Meetings are scheduled with military precision. Every hour, on the hour. The conference room is a battlefield of ideas, graphs, and rapidly crumpling boties. The manager, eyes glazed and pupils like carriage wheels, outlines next quarter's business plan using only interpretive hand gestures and the occasional enthusiastic ha. Every agenda item takes twice as long, because now everyone has 3 new ideas and a burning desire to share all of them immediately. The telegraph boy rushes in with a bundle of urgent messages. He's wearing 2 pairs of shoes, neither his size, and he delivers telegrams at the speed of light, before immediately asking for just a drop of that revitalizing cordial, sir. The only thing more relentless than the incoming correspondence is the collective optimism that this will be the day the company changes history, or invents fax machines 100 years too early. Lunchtime is less a break, more a tactical refueling. Sandwiches are devoured in 3 bites, and someone starts a heated debate about railway expansion. The break room smells faintly of pickled onions, strong cheese, and the unmistakable tang of fortifying spirits. You try to focus on your meal, but you're too busy brainstorming improvements for the company's letterhead and mapping out a side business selling monogrammed snuff boxes. Of course, with all this energy, productivity, is a mixed bag. Yes, the mail is sorted, invoices are tallied, and salesmen are sprinting door to door like they're auditioning for the Olympic relay team. But mistakes happen. The accounts ledger now contains a love letter to the sandwich cart girl. A customer receives an order for 12 umbrellas, 3 chickens, and a bag of marbles. The boss congratulates you for thinking outside the box, which you assume is code for "please redo everything before the shareholders visit." Even the office cat, normally comatose, spends the afternoon pacing the windowsill and staring intensely at a pigeon outside. Rumors spread that the cat has started a side business catching mice for tips and unsolicited career advice. By late afternoon, the energy starts to wane. People stare at the clock, realize it hasn't moved in an hour, and start mumbling about the need for another little restorative. The manager rallies the troops with a rousing speech, which mostly consists of quoting Shakespeare, mispronouncing Latin, and waving his empty tonic bottle for emphasis. As the sun dips behind the rooftops, you gather your scattered notes, ignore the ringing in your ears, and wonder if any work was actually done, or if you've just lived through the world's fastest, most chaotic performance review. Either way, you survive. Congratulations. You're part of the Victorian workforce. Hyperproductive, highly caffeinated, and, by the end of the day, ready for a long nap. Assuming, of course, you can sit still long enough to fall asleep. Your local physician, armed with a stethoscope and a suspicious lack of sleep, prescribes cocaine wine for everything from the common cold to mild existential crises. The catch: now you have 3 heartbeats, and none of them are synchronized. Welcome to the medical profession in Victorian London, where the Hippocratic Oath is interpreted as do absolutely anything, as long as the patient leaves smiling, or at least vibrating. Your doctor is a man of science, which, in this era, mostly means a nice waistcoat, the ability to pronounce phrenology with a straight face, and the sort of bedside manner you only get from drinking laudanum for breakfast. You sit in his wood-panelled surgery as he peers at you over tiny spectacles, scribbling mysterious notes in a ledger. He listens to your pulse, all 3 of them, frowns, and prescribes 2 tablespoons of energizing cordial thrice daily for morale. You ask about side effects. He winks and suggests a nice walk by the river. Just don't get too close to the edge. There is, of course, a method to the madness. Victorian doctors are riding the wave of modern science, which mostly means reading French journals and deciding that if Parisian artists swear by coca leaves, it must work for Aunt Margaret's nervous twitch. The solution to every ailment is either a brisk constitutional, a questionable powder, or both at once. If you're unlucky, it's also leeches. So many leeches. Medical innovation is everywhere. On the corner, Dr. Basil's Office of Electrical Health boasts a machine that can restore lost vigor using only a crank, 2 wires, and an unspoken threat of mild electrocution. You wonder if it works, or if the patients are just grateful to have survived the treatment. Meanwhile, doctors swap recipes for nerve tonics and cheering bitters at their favorite gentleman's club. Half the clientele is in the medical field. The other half just likes free samples. Prescriptions aren't exactly tailored. Describe any symptom, headache, melancholy, or the vague sense that your wallpaper is watching you, and out comes the notebook. The solution is usually a mix of coca wine, something called brain salts, and a recommendation to avoid politics and oysters. You're told to rest frequently and never, under any circumstances, visit Birmingham. Word spreads fast. Patients sing the praises of their new medications. Mrs. Pennington from number 12 hasn't stopped rearranging her parlour furniture for a week. The local grocer reports record sales of lemons. Nobody is sure why, but everyone agrees it's probably the medicine. The town choir delivers Handel's Messiah at double speed, then requests a second performance just for fun. But beneath all the smiles, doctors begin to worry. Are people really healthier, or just too distracted by the racing thoughts to notice their ailments? The waiting room is full, but most complaints are either feeling too energetic or accidentally stayed awake for 3 days. There's talk among the medical elite. Perhaps happiness is contagious. Or maybe they've just invented a new kind of collective mania. Still, doctors persist. To question the medicine would be to question progress. And that's simply not done in polite society. Instead, they double down. New mixtures appear weekly. Elixir of gaiety, jolly drops, the laughing tonic, each one more potent than the last. The pharmacist can barely keep up. At this rate, even the town crier is asking for a dose to make the evening bell ringing more exciting. You leave the doctor's office with a bottle of something that fizzes, glows faintly in the dark, and smells like last year's Christmas pudding. Instructions. Take before meals, after meals, and any time you think too hard about mortality. Your heartbeats might be out of rhythm, but at least you can hear all of them now, loudly and with a cheerful sense of impending doom. As night falls, you sip your cordial, settle into bed, and marvel at the ingenuity of Victorian medicine. Are you actually cured, or just really, really awake? Only time, and perhaps a slightly anxious visit from your physician, will tell. Either way, you're part of history's happiest, most overprescribed health revolution. Sleep tight if you can. The clinking of teacups is interrupted by whispers of, "Did you hear about Lady Barkington's new habit?" Scones are passed around along with sugar cubes soaked in mysterious tinctures. You wonder if you're here for tea or for a chemistry experiment. Either way, everyone is vibrating with enthusiasm. You settle into a velvet-cushioned armchair, trying not to think about how many people have occupied it this week and whether any of them were still vibrating when they stood up. The porcelain tea service sparkles in the late afternoon sun, each cup filled to the brim with a blend that smells faintly of bergamot, citrus, and whatever the butler found behind the apothecary last night. The centerpiece of the table, a three-tiered tray stacked with scones, cakes, and finger sandwiches. Their crusts cut off with military precision. But this isn't just any tea. It's Victorian high tea, which means at least half the refreshments have been improved by the latest medicinal craze. The lemon curd is tangier than you remember, and the strawberry jam has a zing that can only be described as invigorating. Every sugar cube looks suspiciously glossy, and when you plop one into your cup, it fizzes quietly before disappearing, like a tiny, sugary ghost. Around you, conversation flows as freely as the fortified Darjeeling. Lady Barkington, the evening's accidental celebrity, is regaling her audience with tales of renewed energy and spiritual enlightenment, though her left eyebrow twitches every third sentence. Her friends lean in, eager for gossip and a dose of whatever she's having. Lady Willoughby fans herself so vigorously she nearly takes out a vase. The vicar's wife, on her second cup, has just offered to organize a midnight croquet match. Again, you glance at the clock, wondering how much time has passed. The answer is yes. The local children dart past the garden windows, shrieking with the kind of glee that suggests someone has broken into the pantry's supply of children's cordial. Even the family dog seems brighter-eyed than usual, sitting politely beneath the table in hopes of a dropped biscuit, or perhaps simply because he can't stop moving long enough to wander off. Scandal is the main course. Tea is merely the vehicle. Topics swirl faster than cream. The outcome of the Derby, Lord Featherstone's latest political blunder, and the mysterious appearance of 3 peacocks in Mrs. Plum's front garden. The prevailing theory is that they were accidentally set free after someone's third cup of special blend. No secret is safe, especially after everyone's had a few rounds of what the hostess calls refreshment and the staff calls miracle grow for humans. Etiquette, of course, is still observed. Pinkies are raised, hats are removed, and nobody dares spill a drop, though not for lack of tremulous hands. If someone stirs their tea too long, it's politely ignored, even as their spoon spins like a windmill. The clatter of saucers is a symphony, occasionally interrupted by the unmistakable sound of someone giggling at absolutely nothing. The longer the party goes, the more experimental the snacks become. One guest produces a continental delight from a recent trip abroad. A macaroon filled with herbal extract. A hush falls. Someone attempts to cut it in half, but the knife zips through the air like a duelist's rapier. The group erupts in applause, because at this point, everything is worthy of applause. As the sun dips lower, you realize the scandal is not just who's using what, but who's managing to stay upright. Aunt Edith is teaching the younger cousins to dance a Hungarian waltz, no music required. The local doctor has excused himself to freshen up and is currently reciting poetry to the azaleas. You take another bite of scone and hope it doesn't inspire a soliloquy. By the end of tea, everyone is a little brighter, a little lighter, and possibly a little closer to understanding why Victorian England was always on the move. You gather your things, thank your hostess, and step out into the London air, wondering if you'll ever taste tea the same way again, or if your heartbeat will ever return to a normal tempo. Congratulations, you've survived Victorian afternoon tea, part social event, part caffeine bender, part chemistry final, and yes, you may never sleep again. You decide to visit your friend, the local poet, who's written 64 pages of verse since breakfast. None of it rhymes, but it's very passionate. Across town, an inventor claims he's cracked perpetual motion while nervously rearranging his entire workshop for the 7th time this hour. You enter the poet's attic, ducking beneath drying herbs and ribbons of half-finished manuscripts. Sunlight streams through the dusty window, illuminating a flurry of activity that would exhaust a nest of caffeinated squirrels. Your friend greets you with wild eyes, ink-stained fingers, and a monologue about the tragic love between a turnip and a comet. You ask about the inspiration. She points to an ornate bottle labeled Poet's Tonic. Guaranteed muse in every drop. Judging by the stacks of unsorted poems, she's taken enough muse to fuel the collected works of 3 generations. The air here is thick with both genius and chaos. The poet hasn't slept since Tuesday, but assures you that sleep is just a social construct. She recites a new epic, somewhere between Homeric and hysterical, while you nod politely and edge away from the windowsill, where her pet mouse is apparently working on a manifesto. On the other side of town, the scene is no less hectic. The inventor, a wiry man in spectacles and shirt sleeves, has decided that a splash of inventor's cordial in his morning tea is the secret ingredient Edison never discovered. The results are spectacular and only slightly dangerous. His workshop is a carnival of half-finished contraptions. Clockwork birds, spring-loaded hats, and a steam-powered shoe polisher that nearly sets your trousers on fire. He greets you with a handshake that crackles with static electricity and a whirlwind tour of his latest breakthroughs. "Observe," he cries, flipping a lever that makes a teapot whistle the national anthem, and then promptly explode. "A small setback," he mutters, jotting notes on a chalkboard already full of equations, diagrams, and what might be a recipe for lemon cake. He explains, at record speed, that he's on the verge of solving humanity's greatest dilemma. If only he could remember where he put the blueprints. Around both the artist and the inventor, the Victorian era's creative class is in full swing. Painters are dabbing oils onto canvas at lightning speed, sometimes forgetting to take the caps off their tubes. Sculptors are chipping away at blocks of marble while singing snatches of opera in falsetto. One playwright, known for his 5-act tragedies, has just rewritten Act 4 as a musical number and is now convinced it's his masterpiece. There's an energy, a buzz, a restless optimism in the air, fueled, of course, by an endless array of creative tonics, thinking powders, and elixirs of vision. The local apothecary is practically an honorary member of the Royal Academy. Everyone's got a bottle, a packet, or at the very least, a sachet of something guaranteed to expand the mind, stir the spirit, or turn your afternoon into a fever dream. It's not all brilliance and breakthroughs. Sometimes the inspiration turns sideways. The poet collapses mid-sonnet, overcome by a rhyme scheme so complex she may never return. The inventor, determined to conquer sleep, accidentally creates a device that just makes tea at 4 a.m. sharp every morning for the rest of eternity. No one can figure out how to turn it off. The painter, having run out of canvas, starts on the wallpaper. Yet, in all this madness, something miraculous happens. Creativity flourishes. Ideas bounce off the walls like fireflies in a jar. The city is alive with new music, new inventions, and new ways of looking at the world, each one a little more unhinged than the last. Even if most of the creations are abandoned by sunset or quietly removed by the fire brigade, everyone agrees. It's been a productive day. As evening falls, you leave your friends to their genius and their nervous tics. Quietly grateful you live in a time when artistic temperament is both a compliment and a medical diagnosis. History will remember some of their inventions, a few of their poems, and possibly none of their tea-related disasters. But for tonight, at least, the creative fires burn bright, even if nobody can find the off switch. Beneath the gaslights, London's streets are alive with hawkers peddling miracle dust and pep pills. Alley cats are wide-eyed, and so are the chimney sweeps. Even the rats seem unusually energetic. You hold onto your wallet, unsure whether you're about to be sold medicine or a one-way ticket to La La Land. Evening is falling, and the city's respectable facade begins to wobble. The cobblestones are slick with rain and opportunity, every shadow alive with the rustle of commerce and the faint, spicy scent of something not entirely legal. In the marketplace, the line between medical miracle and municipal hazard is blurry at best. Street vendors bark their wares with the confidence of snake charmers and the wardrobe of amateur magicians. "Step right up, sir. Ma'am, try Dr. Spindle's invincible nerve powder. Gives you the vim of a bulldog and the stamina of a canal horse." The seller's hat is too large, his smile too wide, and his hands move so quickly you start to wonder if he's sampling his own supply. Next to him, a competitor touts Her Majesty's own wakeful lozenges, complete with an endorsement from a person who looks suspiciously like a member of the royal household, or at least someone who owns a top hat. The customers are just as lively. Housewives, desperate for relief from daily drudgery, clutch paper sachets of energy salts as they herd squirming children toward home. Delivery boys, already twitchy from too much stimulant cola, dart through traffic, dodging horses and shouting apologies. A fishmonger down the block shouts his daily specials with the conviction of a man whose bloodstream is 20% pure adrenaline. You edge past a group of chimney sweeps, soot-faced, grinning, and positively radiant. They've clearly had a sample or two from the street stalls. One of them starts reciting Shakespeare, the others giggle, and within moments they're breakdancing in a puddle. Their supervisor, old enough to know better, just shrugs and lights a pick-me-up pipe of his own. In every alleyway, opportunity knocks loudly and repeatedly. Need to stay awake for a night shift? There's a syrup for that. Trouble with nerves, digestion, or the existential dread brought on by living in Victorian London? Every street corner offers a cure, complete with a money-back guarantee and a very loose definition of money or back. The market is truly democratic. For a penny, you can have something that promises to fix everything except your actual problems. Not even the city's wildlife is immune. The alley cats, normally champions of nonchalance, are bouncing off barrels and challenging terriers to foot races. Even the rats seem to be working overtime, darting in and out of rubbish heaps with the urgency of bankers at closing time. You're almost tempted to ask one of them for stock tips. The police, or bobbies, stroll past, trying hard to look stern. Every so often, they pause at a stall, inspect a bottle, and walk away just a little bit brisker. The law says certain substances are to be used with caution, which, in Victorian England, translates to good luck, and don't tell your mother. As the night deepens, the market gets wilder. A street performer juggles vials of concentrated vigor to the delight of the crowd. while a fortune teller offers to read your future in the foam of your energy porter. Somewhere, a preacher shouts warnings about sin and self-indulgence, but even he looks suspiciously awake. You watch as a gentleman in evening dress buys clarity drops from a vendor, downs the dose in one gulp, and immediately forgets where he's going. A flower seller, running on nothing but peppermint and possibility, weaves between carriages, hawking bouquets and advice in equal measure. At some point, you realize the city is running not just on ambition and industry, but on a potent cocktail of hope, commerce, and whatever fits in a paper packet. You clutch your wallet, sidestep an enthusiastic dog, and remind yourself to avoid anything labeled guaranteed to change your life. Because in the underbelly of Victorian London, the real miracle is making it home without buying a lifetime supply of miracle dust or becoming tomorrow's cautionary tale. You slip away beneath the flickering gaslight, heartbeat steady, mind racing, quietly amazed at a world where even the rats seem to have somewhere better to be. The local tavern serves pints, laced with a dash of invigorating cordial. By 8 p.m., everyone is either singing, debating the existence of ghosts, or reenacting the Battle of Waterloo on top of the bar. The bartender just shrugs. He hasn't slept since Tuesday. You step inside, greeted by a wall of noise and the sharp, oddly pleasant tang of something that's definitely not just hops and barley. The place is packed, every bench filled with regulars and newcomers alike, all talking much too fast and gesticulating as if they've just invented semaphore. Tankards clink, laughter erupts, and the oil lamps flicker as the collective energy threatens to take the roof off. At the heart of it all is the pub's prized invention, the rejuvenation pint. The secret? A splash of patent cordial, part restorative, part roulette wheel. You watch as the bartender, a man with bags under his eyes and the stamina of a circus acrobat, pours out pints with the speed and precision of someone who's forgotten what sleep feels like. He adds a dash from a mysterious bottle, gives each glass a conspiratorial swirl, and slides them down the bar like a Victorian game show host. By the second round, the effects are everywhere. A cluster of young clerks begins a spontaneous sing-along, belting out sea shanties and occasionally inventing verses on the fly. At the next table, two grizzled dock workers debate metaphysics. Is the universe infinite or just the number of unpaid bar tabs? Their argument is interrupted by a tipsy accountant who, for reasons known only to himself, starts tap dancing on a stool. The crowd roars approval. Every pub in London seems to have its own special, each one claiming to be more fortifying than the last. Some go for gentle stimulation, a drop in the mild ale. Others take the high road, Comet cider, galvanizing porter, or, for the truly reckless, 3 cheers and a dreamless night. The menu warns, not for the faint of heart, but the only thing fainter than a Victorian's heart is their sense of moderation. In the corner, a group of factory workers reenacts famous moments from British military history. Someone, no one knows who, has found a toy bugle and is now leading a charge of imaginary cavalry across the sawdust floor. Bets are placed on which regular will be the first to fall off a bench, but the odds are even. Everyone's balance is questionable, and the boundary between bravery and nonsense is dangerously thin. Even the pub games are supercharged. Darts are thrown with the confidence of Olympic athletes and the accuracy of storm-tossed ships. Dominoes are slapped down so quickly that the table starts to vibrate. Someone suggests a game of charades, but within minutes it turns into a physical comedy showcase featuring at least one impromptu juggling act and a dramatic impersonation of a startled goose. And then, as midnight approaches, the mood softens. A local poet stands and recites something half-remembered and wholly heartfelt, met with applause and a request for just one more. Glasses are raised, toasts are made to friendship, love, the monarchy, and, naturally, to the bartender, who has now achieved local sainthood status by virtue of sheer endurance. In the background, you notice a few patrons quietly nursing their last pints, eyes wide, hearts full, possibly reconsidering that third round of invigorating cordial. The bartender wipes the counter, smiles at nothing in particular, and starts restocking because in Victorian London, the party is never truly over. Someone is always ready for just one more. Stepping out into the chilly night, you're filled with the kind of warmth that only comes from a room packed with music, laughter, and just enough medical-grade enthusiasm to forget the day's troubles. And as you make your way home, you realize that in the end, the secret ingredient isn't in the bottle. It's in the brilliant, ridiculous company you keep. You survived another night in London's wildest pub. Congratulations. Try not to dream of bugles, ghost debates, or dancing bartenders unless you want to wake up with the urge to sing shanties before breakfast. You meet the eyes of a mysterious stranger across a crowded ballroom, only to realize both of you are experiencing the same hallucination. Flirting is harder when you can't stop talking, and proposals happen at lightning speed. Honeymoons are over by lunchtime. This is courtship, Victorian style, where the dance floor pulses with more energy than a steam engine race, and the punch bowl is less innocent refreshment and more unregulated pharmaceutical experiment. The music swells, couples whirl, and somewhere in the corner a violinist appears to be playing 3 pieces at once. Everyone's cheeks are flushed, eyes bright, and conversation is louder than strictly necessary. The line between romantic tension and sheer nervous energy has never been thinner. You approach your would-be beloved with all the confidence of a man who's had 3 cups of invigorating cordial and can now recite the periodic table in reverse. Introductions are brief, direct, and peppered with confessions. My name is Beatrice. I'm fond of cats, potted ferns, and occasionally seeing sounds. You nod in enthusiastic agreement, certain you'll remember none of this by dessert. Flirtation in this era is not a subtle affair. Pickup lines are delivered at auctioneer speed. Compliments spill out faster than champagne. Your eyes are like the Thames at sunrise. Your posture reminds me of a startled heron. Your energy is truly indescribable. The feeling is mutual. Your partner's heart is also racing. Her sentences come in bursts, and you both break into giggles for no clear reason at all. There's a sense of urgency in the air, as if everyone's afraid the band might pack up and leave or the refreshments might suddenly run out. In reality, it's just the side effects of the social stimulant quietly added to every glass. Couples waltz at a tempo that would terrify Johann Strauss. The chaperones try valiantly to keep pace, but after their 3rd spoonful of digestive enhancer, even they are tempted to join the conga line that has spontaneously formed around the pianoforte. Love letters are dashed off with wild passion and minimal punctuation. A typical note reads, "Dearest Margaret, stop. Can't stop thinking of your freckles, stop. Is this love or heart palpitations, stop. Yours forever or until tea time, stop." Sentiments escalate quickly. Declarations of affection are followed by marriage proposals, requests to meet each other's parakeets, and, on at least one memorable occasion, a joint business proposal for a chain of enthusiasm clubs. Honeymoons, when they happen, are brief but intense. The happy couple sets off for a day at Brighton, walks the entire length of the pier before breakfast, and spends lunch drawing up a 10-year plan. By mid-afternoon, they've learned each other's life stories, tried 3 new miracle tonics, and already experienced their first marital spat. Topic: the correct pronunciation of elixir. By sundown, they're back in London, sharing a cup of relaxing tonic and wondering where the day went. Of course, the crash comes, eventually. When the music stops and the lights dim, romance in the age of the society stimulant can feel both fleeting and bewildering. Yesterday's whirlwind affair is today's awkward nod across a crowded tea room. No one really remembers what was said, but everyone agrees it was probably very important at the time. Still, there are bright moments, moonlit walks through Regent's Park, long conversations about the meaning of life and laundry. and the shared certainty that, for at least one evening, you were the world's greatest lover, or at least the fastest talker. Even the poets have trouble keeping up. Sonnets are composed at record speed but rarely finished. Love tokens are exchanged, lockets, pressed flowers, and naturally, tiny glass vials labeled "For when you miss me" or "Need a quick revive." In the end, the Victorian love life is a grand, messy spectacle, passionate, impulsive, and always a little bit out of breath. It's proof that even in an age powered by chemistry, the most unpredictable force of all is still the human heart, preferably one beating well under 120 times a minute. If the regular pharmacist isn't available, never fear. Dr. Timothy is here, selling a white powder that cures everything except poverty. His cart is surrounded by curious passers-by and 3 angry pigeons. You're not sure what's more dangerous, the powder or his sales pitch. The air is thick with anticipation and just a hint of cinnamon as Dr. Timothy, resplendent in a velvet waistcoat, launches into his afternoon performance. He waves his cane like a conductor, beckoning the crowd closer. Good ladies, fine gentlemen, esteemed pigeons, gather round and bear witness to the miracle of modern medicine. The audience obliges, shuffling forward with the kind of wariness usually reserved for street magicians and tax collectors. He sweeps his arm toward a row of glass jars, each one filled with an unidentifiable substance and an even less identifiable promise. There's lung lightening, brain brilliance, rheumatism away, and the ever-popular guaranteed elixir of perpetual vigor. He claims royal endorsement, divine inspiration, and, at one point, swears he once cured a bishop's horse of the blues. The horse cannot be reached for comment. No ailment is too big, no complaint too small. Suffering from melancholy? Rub this on your temples. Can't sleep? 2 drops under the tongue. Suffering from boredom? Simply inhale vigorously and try painting the ceiling. The showmanship is dazzling. He juggles bottles, offers free samples to children, and demonstrates the healing power of his wares by drinking an entire vial on the spot, then challenging anyone in the crowd to a foot race. The pigeons decline. The onlookers, half entertained and half hopeful, begin to open their purses. Coins clink, hands dart out, and suddenly Dr. Timothy is running his own brisk trade in tiny sachets of optimism. He insists each one is specially blended, personally tested, and never found in stores. He's been chased out of at least 4 boroughs, but here, today, he's king of the cobblestones. You glance at his competitors, no less enthusiastic. Nearby, a rival quack boasts a magnetic healing rod said to align your energies and attract stray cats. Another pitches genuine Persian mummy dust, which, he claims, will grant you the wisdom of ancient kings. The customers nod thoughtfully. Some buy both, hedging their bets in the world's oddest investment scheme. The city authorities try their best. But the tide of medical marvels is relentless. Every few minutes, a policeman strolls by, eyeing the operation suspiciously, only to be handed a bottle of courage in a cup. He pockets it with a nod, perhaps considering it an unofficial hazard bonus. The local vicar receives a tonic for the soul, and soon the bell ringers are performing with newfound enthusiasm, albeit slightly out of tune. Of course, not every miracle pans out. There are tales of citizens who spent a week with glowing ears, or saw the future in a spoonful of clairvoyance cough syrup. The occasional accident, a cart explosion, a small fire, a flock of pigeons flying in geometric shapes, only adds to the legend. After all, if the powder doesn't work, at least the story will. But the heart of the spectacle isn't the cures, it's the hope. The promise that somewhere in one of these vials lies the answer to your troubles. A better night's sleep, a sprightlier step, a way to keep up with the pace of Victorian London. And if all else fails, you still got a good show and, perhaps, a placebo high. As the crowd thins and Dr. Timothy packs up for the next square, you pocket your own tiny packet of panacea powder. Maybe it'll fix your cough. Maybe it'll make you see double. Or maybe it's just the price of admission to a world where anything seems possible. as long as you believe, and can outrun the pigeons. The bobbies are baffled. The crime rate's up, but so is the speed of the criminals. A pickpocket is apprehended after running circles around his pursuers for half an hour. The judge accidentally sentences himself to a month in bed rest after sipping his own restorative tonic. Welcome to the wild side of the Victorian remedy revolution, where even law and order has trouble keeping pace. The streets of London are not just busy, they're a perpetual motion machine. The constables, in their crisp blue coats and shiny helmets, start their shifts with the best intentions and end them in a state of exhausted disbelief. Today's briefing. Remember, gentlemen, if you see someone sprinting up the side of a carriage, it's probably just another case of apothecary enthusiasm. Proceed with caution. Criminals, for their part, have never been so inventive or so energetic. Petty thieves dash down alleys at record speed, scaling fences, lampposts, and the occasional startled milkman. One daring burglar manages to rob 3 shops in under 10 minutes, pausing only to critique the window displays. When finally cornered by a determined constable, he launches into an impromptu speech about the dangers of sugar, confusing everyone long enough to slip away yet again. The bobbies adapt as best they can. Some try vitality elixirs to keep up, but the results are mixed. Officer Brown manages to catch a purse snatcher, only to forget why he's chasing him halfway through. Officer Bell attempts a dramatic rooftop pursuit, but gets distracted by the sudden urge to alphabetize the wanted posters. The criminals, meanwhile, have developed a network of lookouts. Street urchins with eagle eyes and suspiciously jittery hands. The court system, no less affected, wobbles under the influence of the city's new favorite medicine. The magistrate's bench is littered with empty cordial bottles and crumpled handkerchiefs. Trials move at the speed of auctioneers. Witnesses blurt out their stories. Defendants deliver defenses so enthusiastic they border on performance art, and clerks have taken to writing minutes in shorthand just to keep up. It's not unusual for a defendant to plead guilty, innocent, and just a little bit nervous in the same sentence. The judge, struggling to maintain order, sips his own soothing restorative, only to announce, mid-proceedings, that he's sentencing himself to bed rest for the good of public morale. The bailiff must then escort His Honour to his chambers, stopping only for a brisk jog up and down the courthouse steps. The city's jails, never known for their comfort, are now a symphony of pacing and philosophical debate. Prisoners engage in nightly discussions about free will, the merits of laudanum versus lemon water, and whether or not the pigeons outside the window are spies for Scotland Yard. Sleep is rare, pacing is constant. Guards try handing out chamomile tea, but most inmates just use it to water their window box herbs. Another jailhouse innovation. Back on the beat, the police turn to new methods. Undercover apothecary officers pose as street vendors, trying to suss out which powders are making the rounds. Their reports are equal parts useful and surreal. Suspect observed selling zest elixir to a man in a feathered hat. Both parties proceeded to tap dance. Chief Inspector Grimsby wonders if this was always in the job description. Even the newspapers struggle to keep up. Headlines proclaim, "Crime wave hits city, public encouraged to stay indoors and out of the tonic." Readers send in letters, half complaints, half confessions. One elderly resident claims her knitting circle is now a fraternal organization for rapid crochet. And through it all, London hums on, law and chaos locked in a caffeinated, chemical embrace. The criminals are cleverer, the bobbies are quicker, sometimes, and the only true certainty is that court adjourns when everyone runs out of steam or syrup. So, as you stroll past Scotland Yard, remember, in the age of remedies for all, justice is swift, unpredictable, and just a little bit more interesting than usual. Doctors publish endless articles on the invigorating properties of coca, while quietly worrying about the number of patients who now think they're Sherlock Holmes. Diagrams of brains, nerves, and very jittery stick figures fill the pages of medical journals. In laboratories across London, serious men in even more serious waistcoats gather around candlelit tables, peering at test tubes and arguing over the merits of coca extract number 4. Medical societies host weekly debates, often devolving into enthusiastic shouting matches. One camp declares cocaine a miracle cure, good for the nerves, the brain, and possibly the soul, while another raises trembling hands and asks whether anyone else's patients have started composing symphonies at breakfast. You imagine the scene, bespectacled physicians stroking their moustaches, waving pipettes, and scribbling formulas on blackboards. The phrase invigorating tonic is repeated so many times it begins to sound like a hymn. The medical journals, thick and imposing, are soon filled with long-winded essays on the stimulant qualities of the coca leaf, coca and the restoration of gentle spirits, and the lesser read but still important, when patients forget to blink. A new epidemic? Theories multiply like rabbits. One doctor claims cocaine increases the vital animal magnetism. Another believes it clears away melancholy by realigning the humors. Yet another swears by the electromagnetic model, which posits that the mind is like a telegraph and cocaine is the world's most enthusiastic message. The only thing they agree on is that whatever's happening, it's probably unprecedented and possibly unrepeatable. The quest for understanding addiction is anything but clinical. Brain sketches in journals are wildly optimistic. They show normal brains, overly relaxed brains, and properly stimulated brains, the last one surrounded by what appears to be lightning bolts and exclamation marks. A particularly influential monograph suggests the mind operates best at just below the point of comfortable anxiety. A sentiment that resonates deeply with everyone at the Royal Academy of Science, most of whom are now on their 3rd glass of nerve tonic. Victorian scientists aren't short on experiments either. The bravest, or most poorly supervised, among them set out to test the limits. One records his pulse after each dose, only to discover he's lost the ability to write legibly and now prefers to communicate in interpretive dance. Another organizes a controlled trial involving 8 rats, 3 poets, and a particularly lively goldfish. The results are inconclusive, but everyone agrees the goldfish deserves tenure. Meanwhile, reports from the field pour in. Patients write to newspapers, detailing their personal journeys. I tried cocaine for a touch of lethargy, and now I have alphabetized my pantry and solved 3 local crimes. Highly recommend. Others complain of unsettling optimism, restless legs, or the sense that I am simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. The Times receives a letter from a vicar's wife, who claims her husband now hears the bells before they ring. The warning signs are there, if anyone cares to notice. Some patients, it turns out, don't know when to stop. They return for refills, inventing new ailments: Sunday ennui, Tuesday malaise, Friday afternoon existentialism. Doctors, both alarmed and flattered, quietly consult each other. Do your patients sleep? Not really, but they do dust the waiting room. Of course, not all is doom and gloom. The popular press loves the story. Is coca the key to modern genius? Headlines ask, next to sensational tales of authors penning entire novels in a single sitting and students passing exams by reciting the periodic table from memory, forwards and backwards just to show off. There are calls for public lectures, new societies, and, inevitably, government commissions to study the question more thoroughly, preferably over a round of scientific refreshments. By the end of the decade, the cracks begin to show. More journals quietly print cautionary tales. Excessive use may cause palpitations, irritability, and a mysterious urge to rearrange furniture. A few brave physicians write, perhaps moderation is best, only to be drowned out by the chorus of just one more study. Still, the legacy remains. Victorian science gave us grand theories, odd diagrams, and more questions than answers. But it also proved, yet again, that when faced with the unknown, people will try anything. Especially if it comes in a handsome little bottle, every party has to end, even if it takes 3 days. The city streets are littered with broken dreams and empty tonic bottles. Society wakes up with a collective headache and some hard questions. The local priest's Sunday sermon is suspiciously loud and filled with warnings about the wages of powder. You roll out of bed to the sound of bells, real or imagined. It's honestly hard to tell anymore, and rub your temples. The once glittering city is moving in slow motion, its population nursing hangovers of heroic proportions. Gone are the bright eyes and rapid banter. What remains is a city draped in regret and cold compresses. You peek out the window at a world that feels, for the first time in months, suspiciously normal. Breakfast is no longer an adventure in caffeinated optimism. It's dry toast, weak tea, and the collective wish for a time machine. The miracle tonics have run dry, or worse, no longer have any effect. You consider a spoonful of morning reviver but think better of it, haunted by the memory of last week's bout of spontaneous furniture reupholstery. The family dog has finally stopped reciting Shakespeare and is now practicing the ancient art of sulking under the sofa. On the street, neighbors exchange sheepish glances. Conversations are quiet, voices hoarse, and nobody wants to mention the unfortunate incidents of Friday night, when Mrs. Hargreaves attempted to climb the gas lamp to get a better view of Saturn. The grocer is sweeping up broken bottles from his doorstep, muttering about the folly of progress. Even the street urchins look subdued, pushing carts full of empty vials and half-eaten scones. At church, the mood is somber. The vicar, red-eyed and impassioned, thunders from the pulpit about the perils of false joy and artificial vigor. Congregants nod solemnly, glancing sideways at the pharmacist, who is trying to blend into the wallpaper. Children squirm in the pews, unsure if their sudden craving for spinach is a sign of moral awakening or just the lingering aftertaste of children's cheerful cordial. The papers, always quick to turn on a trend, now feature cautionary tales on every front page. Society in crisis. Have we gone too far? Lady Pennington's memoirs. From elation to embarrassment in 12 hours. Editorials plead for a return to sensible living, suggesting hobbies like embroidery, brisk walking, and gardening, none of which hold a candle to last month's experimental poetry slam in the park. Doctors, who were once heroes, are now a little less visible. Appointments are booked out for weeks, mostly for complaints like general malaise, chronic jitters, or the inexplicable urge to alphabetize the pantry at 3 a.m. The waiting room is a mix of denial and confession. "I just need something for the headaches," says one man, as the pharmacist silently slides him a bottle of chamomile syrup and a pamphlet on the benefits of sleep. Regret hangs in the air, heavy as London fog. Some vow to swear off powders and potions entirely, while others try to negotiate a new normal, perhaps just a half dose before dinner. The black market, always resourceful, adapts with milder remedies and detox tonics that promise to restore lost virtue and the ability to sit still for more than 5 minutes. Results are, at best, inconclusive. The real cost becomes clear in quieter moments. Lost time, strained friendships, slightly singed curtains. You tally up the receipts, the confessions, the apologies written in shaky handwriting. But there's something else too, a faint, grudging respect for the stubborn hope that started it all. Maybe the Victorians overdid it. They usually did. But they never stopped chasing the dream of a better, brighter, more energetic tomorrow. As Sunday evening settles in and the city finds its breath again, you realize that regret is just another part of the cycle. Tomorrow the sun will rise, tea will be poured, and the streets will fill with people once more, wiser perhaps, or at least more cautious. And while the high has faded, the story of London's grand experiment lives on, a reminder that every age has its miracles and its Mondays. You sneak behind the counter and discover a locked cabinet filled with jars labeled "For emergency use only." The emergency, apparently, is anyone having a bad day. The apothecary's apprentice is practicing his concerned face in the mirror. It's a world of quiet chaos back here, part science lab, part treasure vault, and part social club for substances that would make even the boldest chemist reconsider his career. The shelves creak under the weight of mysterious bottles, each one promising salvation in a crisis. Restorative elixir, waking waters, mourner's marvel, and the ever-popular guaranteed good cheer. If a solution to life's woes could be brewed, distilled, or pickled, it's in this cabinet. You inspect a tin of midnight nerve powder, directions. For sleeplessness, social anxiety, or impromptu piano recitals. Next to it sits a file of jubilant drops, which advertises instant optimism and a warning to avoid sunlight or philosophical debates for at least an hour after dosing. There are jars with even less subtle branding. Utter desperation salts, emergency motivation paste, and, in a pinch, just go lie down syrup. Now in new blackberry flavor. The apprentice, noticing your curiosity, tries to look authoritative, clutching a mortar and pestle and reciting the only Latin phrase he knows. He explains, in a voice cracking with the weight of responsibility, that the secret stash is reserved for the truly dire cases of heartbreak, Mondays, bad poetry readings, or when the town crier loses his voice mid-announcement. You nod as if this is perfectly reasonable. Each jar has a story. That one's for Lord Witherspoon, the apprentice whispers, pointing to a dusty blue bottle. He's got a chronic case of ennui and a tendency to challenge the wallpaper to staring contests. Another is marked Mrs. Penelope's special mix, rumoured to have saved last year's garden party from certain disaster when the mayor mistook the punch bowl for a footbath. Behind the counter, the apothecary himself rules over the madness with the serene focus of a chess master who's never played chess. He moves between shelves, weighing powders and sniffing tinctures, sometimes stopping to test a new revitalizer by dropping it into his own tea. Every so often, he jots down a note. Add more lemon zest. Less chance of spontaneous dancing. The secret stash isn't just for the regulars. Visitors from out of town sometimes stagger in, faces drawn by the trials of London life, and are quietly handed a traveller's tonic for the general condition of being elsewhere. The formula, strictly guarded, is rumoured to contain exotic ingredients, Peruvian coca, Sumatran spices, and something called euphorium, which you're told is neither plant nor mineral, but a state of mind. On Fridays, the staff hosts an unofficial support group, swapping tales of customer catastrophes and trading recipes for Monday relief powder. The stories are legendary. The time an entire theatre troupe arrived, despondent after a review called their play brisk, or when the local postmaster lost 3 days and gained a new philosophy after sampling inspiration syrup on a dare. Of course, the best sellers never make it to the shelf. They're reserved for behind-the-counter negotiations. There's Librarian's Lifeline, Seamstress's Second Wind, and the enigmatic Night Porter's Nap in a Bottle. The city's social network runs through this little cabinet, every emergency and celebration funneled through the apothecary's skilled, slightly ink-stained hands. And not every remedy is a triumph. One experimental batch of happy pills resulted in an epidemic of spontaneous limerick competitions. No one slept for 2 days, and the apprentice still flinches at the mention of Nantucket. The cabinet holds the leftovers, quietly aging and waiting for the day someone feels brave or desperate enough to give them a second chance. So you slip out from behind the counter, a little wiser and slightly more hopeful, clutching a discreet brown paper parcel for later. You nod at the apprentice, who returns to practicing his look of grave concern, and thank the apothecary, who winks and tells you to pace yourself. After all, The real emergency isn't a lack of remedies, but running out of reasons to laugh. You step back into the bustling shop, feeling the warmth of secret solutions and silent camaraderie. Behind the counter, the cabinet remains, locked, loaded, and ready to rescue London, one very bad day at a time. Nursery rhymes take on a new energy when everyone under 10 is fueled by syrup. The nanny is regretting her life choices, and the family dog is hiding under the piano. Nap time, as a concept, is dead. Welcome to the Victorian nursery, a world where chaos is only ever a few spoonfuls away. The air is thick with the scent of lavender water, spilled porridge, and that faint medicinal tang that says someone's been at the children's soothing syrup again. You open the door to a scene of unbridled bedlam. Toys whirl through the air with abandon, rocking horses buck like wild mustangs, and 3 small children are attempting to climb the drapes while reciting the alphabet, backwards, in French. The nanny, once optimistic, now clings to her sense of duty with the brittle determination of someone who's had a day. She brandishes her storybook like a shield, her eyes darting between the door and the nearest open window. "Who wants a story?" she asks, voice trembling. The answer, apparently, is all of us, at once. And also, we'd like to act it out in real time. Even the clock seems confused, ticking much too fast, then not at all. This is the land of perpetual energy, where quiet time is a cruel joke and bedtime stories are delivered at auctioneer speed. Dolls and tin soldiers are drafted into elaborate battles that rage across the nursery floor, over chairs, under beds, and into the bath, where the youngest is currently launching a fleet of soap boats. Victorian remedies for childhood woes are creative, if not always wise. The children's cordial, a sweet syrup with the curious power to make small humans briefly invincible, is dispensed liberally for teething, crankiness, boredom, and sometimes just as a reward for not gluing the cat to the wallpaper. The effect is instantaneous. Smiles grow wider, giggles multiply, and the collective attention span stretches to a dizzying 12 seconds. Nanny considers dosing herself, but wisely settles for a cup of chamomile tea and a quick prayer. Toys, once innocent, become instruments of wild invention. Building blocks turn into towers, castles, or, when thrown, experimental flying machines. The wooden train sets circles the rug at breakneck speed, cheered on by a chorus of children and one slightly hysterical parrot. A doll's tea party, intended as a calm interlude, quickly devolves into a parliamentary debate about the best flavor of jam, followed by a scone-based food fight. Every attempt at order is met with gleeful resistance. "Story time," the nanny announces. The response? A stampede. She reads Jack and Jill, but the children decide they'd rather be Jack, Jill, the hill, and the bucket, all at the same time. The tale ends with a spontaneous reenactment that leaves the nursery rug covered in imaginary water and the real bucket stuck on someone's head. Pets are not immune. The family dog, once the proud master of the house, now seeks refuge beneath the piano, ears pinned back, tail between legs. The cat, wise beyond her years, has taken up residence on the highest bookshelf, surveying the chaos with the resigned air of a monarch forced to live among peasants. Nap time arrives and promptly departs. Blankets are forts, pillows are projectiles, and lullabies only serve to inspire interpretive dance. Eventually, the children collapse in a heap, somewhere between the rocking horse and the toy chest, still murmuring stories, giggling and plotting the next grand adventure. The nanny breathes a sigh of relief, pours herself a second cup of tea, and vows, quietly, to suggest stricter syrup rationing at the next parental meeting. So ends another hour, just one, of Victorian childhood. Wild, imaginative, slightly sticky, and powered by an unending stream of toys, tales, and tonics. As the sun sets and peace briefly descends, you marvel at the resilience of the young and wonder, not for the first time, how anyone in this house ever grew up at all. The local papers alternate between praise, a new dawn for British energy, and panic. Is your butler a secret fiend? Cartoons of wild-eyed politicians flood the broadsheets. Public discourse reaches a fever pitch, then immediately loses its train of thought. In the smoke-filled offices of Fleet Street, editors rub their ink-stained hands together, cackling with the promise of yet another scandalous headline. The typesetters move with purpose, and more than a little nervous energy, thanks to the editor's restorative circulating in the back room. The presses thunder, spitting out reams of stories destined to be read, debated, ignored, and then repurposed as fish and chips wrappers by nightfall. You settle down with the morning's broadsheet, careful not to get newsprint on your toast, and survey the chaos. Page 1 is a dizzying mix of hard facts and speculative fiction. Londoners in a frenzy, tonic bottles found in public fountain. Next to it, a heartwarming piece on a Labrador that ran 12 miles after licking a child's cough syrup. There's a full-page editorial warning that society is at a crossroads, more pep or more prudence. A question that nobody, not even the author, seems able to answer. Cartoonists have a field day. Every political adversary is drawn with bulging eyes and suspiciously powdered noses. One recurring character, the Minister of Misery, is shown either snoozing at his desk or leading a jittery conga line through Parliament. Another strip, Mrs. Z, muddles marvellous remedies, lampoons the apothecaries. Every dose she serves turns a dignified Londoner into a tap-dancing dervish. No topic is off-limits. Is the Queen herself partial to coca wine? Did half the bishops at the last synod forget their sermons, or just misplace their notes in a flurry of tonic-fueled inspiration? The Dear Agony Aunt column is flooded with letters. Help! My husband alphabetizes the silverware after every cup of health tea. Should I be concerned if my child recites Latin backwards before bed? The answers are reassuring, if not exactly helpful. Simply add more biscuits to their diet and avoid discussing metaphysics at supper. The real fun is in the moral panics. Public meetings are called, fiery speeches made, and committees formed to investigate the state of national nerves. There are calls for stricter regulations, public inventories of every bottle in every home, and, for reasons never fully explained, a movement to ban the sale of sugar cubes at railway stations. Meanwhile, another editorial argues that British pluck has always been about a little extra something in the tea, and perhaps the nation's only real danger is running out. Soon, rival newspapers spring up, each with their own spin. The Evening Exhilarator runs recipes for invigorating cordials alongside stern warnings not to operate horse-drawn vehicles after consumption. The Weekly Sober Truth prints lurid testimonials. I tried tonic once, now my uncle is a lighthouse keeper. Rumours spread as fast as the latest fads. And the coffee houses buzz with debate, laughter, and a little bit of anxiety over the state of everyone's cuticles. The press even starts to influence policy. Politicians, desperate to avoid the next day's front-page humiliation, vow to investigate, then quietly send their assistants to fetch a bottle from the local chemist for research purposes. Parliamentary debates grow even more chaotic, punctuated by energetic speeches and the occasional impromptu limerick. The Speaker of the House is rumoured to have installed a tea urn full of restorative blend behind the rostrum. No one denies it. By week's end, the city's attention span has shifted. The next big story is already brewing. An opera singer accused of excessive vibrato after sampling a new Nightingale nectar. The old scandal is yesterday's fish wrap, but the conversation, for better or worse, continues. And so London churns on, fueled by a merry-go-round of headlines, moral panics, and the eternal hope that tomorrow's news will be ever so slightly less exhausting, or at least more entertaining. Either way, you turn the page, sip your tea, and get ready for whatever comes next. Queen Victoria's doctor reportedly prescribes her coca wine for headaches, and suddenly every social climber is desperate for a royal buzz. The palace is oddly lively, and the corgis refuse to sit still. It starts, as most Victorian trends do, with a quiet mention in the Times. Her Majesty enjoys a modest glass of medicinal tonic for her nerves. By the next morning, every grocer in London is sold out of coca wine, and the royal apothecary is contemplating early retirement. The Queen's private physician, Sir James, is elevated from obscure courtier to national tastemaker overnight. His secret? A recipe so potent it could liven up a wax museum, or at least a dinner party at Balmoral. Suddenly, society's finest are tripping over each other to secure a bottle, a recommendation, or, at the very least, a rumour that they once stood behind Prince Albert in line at the chemist. Afternoon teas become tastings. This blend is the same one Her Majesty uses. Note the subtle hint of Peruvian sunshine. Hostesses compete to see whose wine is the most authentic, the most invigorating, the most likely to cause spontaneous poetry. The effect on court life is immediate. Official functions run suspiciously on time, with staff zipping between staterooms at impressive velocities. The palace butler takes to wearing 2 watches and still claims he's late. Even the royal horses develop a spring in their step, much to the confusion of the grooms. Dinner conversations are animated, if a bit circular. Did I mention my latest tonic? Yes, 3 times, Lord Chamberlain. But tell us again. Out in the city, a wave of imitation sweeps the salons and drawing rooms. Society magazines gush over the Queen's latest secret for vibrancy, conveniently forgetting last month's excitement over petticoats with extra starch. The less reputable apothecaries slap gold foil labels on every bottle, confident no one will question the source. Guaranteed royal blend, they claim, never mind the spelling errors or the suspicious presence of glitter in the mixture. Social climbers seize their moment. The very mention of Her Majesty's tonic opens doors, sometimes even actual ones, as hosts abandon subtlety for the chance to discuss medicinal strategies over biscuits. Gossip columns tally sightings. Lady Marlborough was seen ordering an extra case. Lord de Vere's moustache appears especially perky, and at least 2 duchesses have reportedly mistaken a potted plant for a debutante. Coca wine may be to blame. Even the corgis, those long-suffering palace mainstays, are swept up in the mania. Rumour has it they've sampled a few drops purely by accident, of course. And now, stage nightly races up and down the corridors. The Queen finds this delightful, though the footman less so, as retrieving a caffeinated corgi from under the throne requires a combination of agility and prayer. There are, naturally, some dissenting voices. The Archbishop of Canterbury offers a stern sermon on the perils of chasing royal remedies, though it's undermined when the choir sings their hymn at double speed. Parliament debates whether celebrity tonics require regulation, but most members are too busy testing samples to form a quorum. The Prime Minister, when pressed, admits he prefers tea, but is later seen humming show tunes in the corridor. The public, ever eager to follow the crown, embraces the trend with gusto. Bakeries offer Victoria buns glazed with herbal essence. Stationers print elegant labels for home-bottled mixtures. Even the local pub tries its hand at Queen's Reserve, though it tastes suspiciously like watered-down sherry with a hint of regret. In the end, the royal endorsement cements coca wine as the must-have of the season. It doesn't matter if the effect is real, imagined, or simply the result of wanting to feel a bit more royal while stuck in London's endless drizzle. The Queen's headache becomes everyone's excuse for a little pick-me-up. And for a brief, buzzing moment, Britain marches in lockstep, straight to the nearest bottle. And the corgis, still wide awake, still victorious, and, as always, slightly ahead of the curve. Cargo ships unload crates of coca leaves from far-off lands. Exotic new products flood the market. Londoners debate whether Peru is a real place or just a state of mind. Step down to the docks, where the Thames is as crowded as a Monday market. and ships from every corner of the empire jostle for space. Steamers belch and clatter, their holds bursting with barrels marked fragile, urgent, and occasionally strictly for medicinal use. Probably. Longshoremen haul mysterious packages wrapped in burlap, each promising to invigorate, stimulate, and possibly teach you Spanish. The air is thick with spice, salt, and the thrilling possibility that whatever you're breathing could be the next big thing. It's not just coca leaves, though those are definitely the stars of the show, arriving in quantities that make the customs officers look at each other and quietly revise their retirement plans. There are crates of Amazonian bark, sacks of Andean energy beans, and boxes of dried flowers with names unpronounceable and effects unknown. One enterprising merchant offers Patagonian lightning root, which, he assures you, is twice as strong as coffee and far less likely to make you regret your childhood. Londoners crowd the docks, curious and slightly suspicious. The fashionable set discusses the origin of coca with great authority, though their geography is a work of fiction. "It's from Peru, darling, next to Istanbul," says Lady Cranberry, fanning herself vigorously. Her companion nods. "My cousin went there once, came back speaking in rhyme for a week. Whether Peru is a country, a river, or a state of mind, nobody is entirely sure, but everyone agrees it sounds marvelously invigorating. As the goods flow from ship to street, new businesses spring up overnight. Continental Curiosities, the Amazon Emporium, and Mr. Goodbody's House of Healthful Import line the avenues, their shopfronts crowded with tinctures, powders, and jars of mysterious pickled objects. Shopkeepers offer samples to the brave and discounts to the indecisive. In the finest homes, Peruvian tea becomes the fashionable new beverage, served with a side of nervous anticipation and perhaps a discreet warning not to operate heavy machinery. The impact isn't just commercial, it's cultural. Newspapers feature dispatches from foreign correspondents, some of whom have never left Surrey, describing wild jungles, ancient rituals, and people who, legend has it, can sprint up a mountain after a single sip of coca tea. Travel writers churn out lurid tales of South American adventure, most of which involve at least one shaman, a panther, and a polite request to never ask what's really in the soup. Even the city's language changes. Children race down the street, pretending to be Peruvian explorers, searching for El Dorado and, failing that, the sweet shop. Poets work new words into their verses. Debutantes drop exotic phrases into conversation, sometimes at random. "I find the weather rather Bolivian today, don't you?" The trendiest hosts host Amazonian evenings, where the drinks are strong, the stories are stronger, and the guests leave with a renewed sense of global connection and possibly mild dizziness. The international flavor extends to medicine as well. Doctors recommend imported tonics proven effective in the Andes, though none of them have actually been further south than Brighton. Apothecaries toot foreign secrets and ancient traditions, their windows lined with maps, exotic stamps, and a stuffed parrot who's learned to say, "Try the new batch, mate." Still, there's an undercurrent of uncertainty. Is all this really safe? Will the next shipment be even stronger? And just how much of South America will Londoners consume before someone asks whether they're actually meant to eat the leaves or just wave them about for luck? But those are questions for another day. For now, the ships keep arriving, the crates keep opening, and London grows ever more connected to a world of adventure, energy, and delightful confusion. After all, in a city where every other building is an apothecary and every street corner offers a passport to distant lands, who wouldn't want to believe in a little magic, real or otherwise? So the next time someone asks you about the Peruvian secret, just nod sagely and pour another cup. Whether it's a country, a cure, or just a good story, it's all part of the world's greatest sleep-deprived adventure. Parliament attempts to ban cocaine, immediately replaced by coca-flavored health salts. New laws spark a black market that's somehow both terrifying and incredibly polite. The first rumblings of reform begin with a newspaper headline and a scandal, society in peril, even the vicar, is vibrating. Committees are formed, experts summoned, and after 3 months of energetic debate fueled, ironically, by Parliament's own private stash of refreshment, cordial, the lawmakers announce sweeping new restrictions. Cocaine, in its pure form, is to be banned. The mood in Westminster is stern, the language flowery, and everyone in the public gallery is, very quietly, passing around peppermints. The legal language is dense, filled with whereases and heretofores. But for every clause, a workaround emerges. Apothecaries, undeterred, simply reach for their inkwells and get creative. Tonic becomes South American nerve elixir. Invigorating wine is rebottled as muscle cordial, now with extra zest. And for the discerning customer, health salts arrive, disguised in unassuming tins, promising all the pep with none of the pesky legal entanglements. The result is less prohibition, more a nationwide game of charades. Meanwhile, London's black market flourishes in its own distinctly British way. Gone are the back-alley dealings of noir fiction. Here, the midnight pharmacists operate in well-lit tea rooms and discreetly coded newspaper ads. Ask for Mr. Green at the greengrocer, whispers the city's new grapevine. Passwords are exchanged in perfect Queen's English. If caught, the guilty party is more likely to apologize for the inconvenience than deny the offense. Law enforcement, for their part, are caught in a tangle of contradictions. Bobbies confiscate suspicious powders only to discover they're labeled detergent for use on stubborn moods. Police dogs, once trained for the faintest whiff of contraband, now cower in confusion, their noses overwhelmed by a wave of aromatic health dusts. The chief constable attends a public demonstration, only to leave with a pamphlet and a free sample for household use. Public opinion splits faster than a pharmacist's bill. Letters to the Times range from stern admonitions, ban all imported stimulants, to desperate pleas. But what about my lumbago? Town halls host raucous debates, often devolving into impromptu talent, shows as the more enthusiastic participants demonstrate the side effects of withdrawal or, in one case, interpretive dance. The Society for the Protection of British Energy holds candlelight vigils, followed by cake sales and impassioned, slightly overlong speeches. Of course, the regulations create as many problems as they solve. Genuine medical patients now must navigate a maze of paperwork, coded language, and the apothecary's raised eyebrow. The determined will always find a way. Doctors' notes are passed under tables, herbal supplements are sold in the open, and the cleverest entrepreneurs begin shipping botanical curiosities direct to customers, hidden in shipments of tropical fruit and opera scores. Inevitably, a few scandals erupt. The Earl of Nottingwood is discovered hoarding South American baking soda in his wine cellar. A famous opera singer is rumoured to keep a secret stash of voice powder sewn into her gloves. Parliament itself is not immune. An anonymous tip leads to the discovery that the Prime Minister's morning tea is, in fact, 3 parts imported energizing blend. The resulting headlines are worth their weight in patent medicines. Yet, through all the bans, loopholes, and public outcry, the great Victorian engine chugs on. London's cleverest minds find ways to skirt the edges of legality, inventing ever more outlandish remedies for the daily grind. And while the official position may be one of caution, the unofficial motto is simple. If you can't call it cocaine, call it something else and carry on. So, next time you pass a shop window advertising Mountain Spring Revival Powder or Regal Fortitude Drops, give a knowing nod to the inventiveness of a city that never quite says no. Just not at this address, officer. The spirit of the age, after all, is nothing if not resourceful. And sometimes, the law is just another ingredient in the world's most creative recipe. Health reformers begin popping up, advocating for temperance, clean living, and slightly less screaming. They hand out pamphlets, herbal teas, and very judgmental looks. No one listens, but everyone collects the free samples. In the quiet back rooms of city chapels and bustling public halls, a new breed of enthusiast emerges. They're the clean living crusaders, earnest, determined, and armed with enough leaflets to wallpaper the Crystal Palace. They march into the fray of Victorian excess, convinced they can rescue the nation's nerves with nothing more than dandelion root, group prayer, and the world's most aggressively bland biscuits. Their message? Simple. Enough with the cordials and tonics. Let's try oatcakes, long walks, and herbal infusions. They organize lectures with catchy titles like Life After Syrup, Why You Don't Need Tonic to Enjoy a Cloudy Afternoon, and the perennial crowd favorite, Herbal Teas. Exciting or just hot water with plants. Local notables nod along politely, but you can see them glancing longingly at the nearest apothecary window. Pamphlets flutter through the city like autumn leaves. You, too, can be calm. Throw away your powder, try parsley. The reformers gather in parks for group exercises, calisthenics at dawn, followed by a breakfast of lukewarm water and a motivational reading. Most of the participants are there for the novelty and the free sample jars of energizing nettle spread. The movement's motto is, just try one spoonful, though it quickly acquires an unofficial corollary. Then please don't make me finish the jar. Their greatest strength is optimism. Reformers believe in transformation, in the power of community, and in the idea that a good, bracing cup of lemon balm can substitute for 3 days' lost sleep. They stage sober socials, gatherings where no stimulant stronger than ginger beer is served. There's music, dancing, and an air of suppressed longing. As most guests recall last month's Punch Bowl Poetry Slam with misty-eyed nostalgia, the herbalists of the movement are legendary. Mrs. Pinchley's reviving rosehip tisane is sold at every rally, though most attendees agree it tastes faintly of damp socks and self-improvement. Try my valerian drops for sleeplessness, she proclaims, or perhaps a dab of ashwagandha paste for your nerves. The city's chemists, watching their profits wobble, respond with ever more creative blends, now with extra sage. Certified caffeine-free by my aunt. Meanwhile, the true believers cultivate gardens filled with peppermint, chamomile, and whatever else will grow in the shadow of a London chimney. The temperance societies grow ever more ambitious. Their pamphlets warn of the dangers of nervous overstimulation and what happens when your doctor's handwriting becomes illegible even to God. They appeal to mothers, to clergy, to anyone who will listen. They petition Parliament for laws in defense of the national peace and the general tranquility of household pets. Still, the clean living movement faces an uphill battle. For every pamphlet distributed, 100 bottles of invigorating elixir are quietly sold under the table. For every rally, another pub offers a new healthful cordial containing everything except actual sobriety. The reformers are tireless but outnumbered, their lectures drowned out by the thud of dance shoes and the clink of glassware from the neighboring saloon. Yet their efforts are not entirely in vain. A few converts emerge, mild-mannered souls who find solace in carrot juice, or families whose children finally nap for longer than 6 minutes. The movement leaves its mark, a gentle reminder that, even in the wildest age of excess, someone is always there to suggest you drink more water and try a nice cup of calming broth. In the end, the reformers retreat to their teapots, undeterred, ever hopeful, always prepared to share a recipe for radish soup and a lecture on the invigorating power of a cold bath. They may not have stopped the city, but they've managed to slow it down for a moment, long enough to remind everyone that sometimes the best remedy is just a quiet afternoon and a book, assuming you can remember where you left it. Society's great experiment takes a turn as people try quitting cold turkey. The results? Restlessness, gloom, and a sudden interest in long walks and staring at wallpaper. Support groups form, consisting mostly of people quietly vibrating in unison. It begins with a decision. Maybe it's the ringing in your ears, or the sudden realization that you've alphabetized your sock drawer 6 times since breakfast. Maybe it's the doctor's gentle suggestion. Have you considered less tonic? and perhaps more staring into the middle distance. Either way, the moment arrives. Londoners decide en masse to see what happens if they stop, just for a bit, just to see. The early days are awkward. Breakfast is eerily calm, without the usual fizz, pop, or mysterious cloud rising from the morning invigorator. Conversation at the table is quieter, punctuated by long silences and the occasional sigh. You take a walk, only to discover the city sounds different, slower, softer. As if the carriages and street vendors are moving through honey, you pause to admire the wallpaper in the front hall, then realize you've been standing there for 15 minutes, hypnotized by the pattern and feeling strangely philosophical. Nervous energy builds up, searching for an outlet. Some take up hobbies, whittling, knitting, bird-watching, or, most popular of all, pacing. The parks fill with restless figures marching in circles, muttering about a return to clarity while fighting the urge to sprint across the duck pond. Others develop a sudden passion for journaling, recording their symptoms with clinical precision. Day 3. Still irritable, attempted to bake. Result: biscuits that could shatter windows. Support groups spring up all over town. In church basements and borrowed parlors, men and women gather, blinking in the gaslight and clutching mugs of herbal tea. Meetings start with a chorus of sighs, followed by a round of awkward confessions. "It's been 12 hours since my last cordial," someone announces. "I can now hear my own thoughts. I do not enjoy this." The group nods, united by shared suffering and the hope that this, too, will pass. Withdrawal has its lighter moments. The city's pet population, finally allowed a break from the high-octane antics of their owners, visibly relaxes. Dogs stretch out for marathon naps. Cats, long banished to bookshelves, return to the hearth, smugly superior as the humans shuffle about in a haze. Nannies, previously reduced to referees, discover they can read an entire story without interruption, though they're not always sure the children are still in the room. But there are darker spells, too. Melancholy settles over dinner parties. Friends exchange glum glances and reminisce about the golden age of endless energy, conveniently forgetting last year's incident with the town crier and the mayor's prize pig. Letters to the Times bemoan the loss of societal sparkle. Sales of lemon balm, valerian root, and patience powder, mostly oat flour but nobody minds, skyrocket. Doctors see an influx of patients convinced they're dying of ennui. Prescriptions are simple. Try rest and avoid strong emotions. Philosophers hold impromptu lectures on the meaning of boredom, attended mostly by people hoping for a distraction. The city's musicians pen moody ballads, while poets rediscover the creative joys of complaining. Still, as the days drag on, something begins to shift. The fog in your mind lifts, just a little. Sunrises seem brighter, the taste of tea becomes more interesting. Sleep returns, tentatively at first, then in glorious, uninterrupted stretches. Laughter, slow, genuine, and just a bit surprised, finds its way back to dinner tables. Friendships grow deeper, built on long walks and companionable silences. Withdrawal, it turns out, is a shared struggle and an accidental rediscovery of life's quieter pleasures. There are still cravings, still jokes about just one more dose. But there's also the dawning realization that even in a city famous for its buzz, it's possible, just possible, to find contentment in the hush. And so, the great Victorian detox unfolds. Restless, awkward, often hilarious, and by the end, oddly hopeful. For a moment, London learns to embrace stillness and remembers what it's like to just be wallpaper, walks, and all. The epidemic slows. People try to go back to normal, whatever that means. Afternoon tea becomes a little less exciting. The city exhales, exhausted, but still a little twitchy. You wake up to a quieter London. The street outside is nearly serene. No frenzied clatter of delivery boys, no impromptu juggling acts on the corner, no echo of last night's philosophical debate spilling out of the local pub. Instead, you hear the gentle, uncertain sounds of a city reacquainting itself with a slower pace. The measured clop of horse hooves, the distant whistle of a kettle, the rare but glorious sound of silence. The change is everywhere. Shop windows still glitter with jars and bottles, but their contents have been rebranded. Restorative herbal infusions, gentle nerve drops, and decaffeinated cordial, now with 80% less panic. The apothecaries move through their routines with a new, careful deliberation. No more handing out energy potions like party favors at a children's birthday. Behind the counter, the old secret stash is tucked away, reserved for real emergencies, such as the town crier's annual lost bell incident or the mayor's poetry readings. At home, morning rituals feel softer. Breakfast is porridge and eggs, not a wakeful syrup shot and an emergency scone. Letters take a bit longer to write, but the handwriting is noticeably less erratic. And you finally have time to finish a sentence before inventing 3 new hobbies. Children rediscover naps. The dog stops hiding. The cat, sensing a return to power, spends the day basking on a sunlit windowsill, unmoved by the family's newfound tranquility. Social life adjusts, if awkwardly. Afternoon teas are quieter affairs. The scandal and excitement replaced by thoughtful conversation and, every now and then, a contemplative yawn. At parties, there's less dancing on tables and more sitting on sofas. The art of polite small talk returns, along with the classic British pastime of quietly judging your neighbour's choice of biscuit. Even the city's artists and inventors are affected. The latest play runs at a reasonable length. The orchestra keeps a steady tempo, and poets are back to writing sonnets that mostly rhyme. The age of endurance is over. Now, London has entered what historians will someday call the age of sensible bedtimes. But the transition isn't without its struggles. The buzz lingers, just under the surface. The city's collective energy doesn't vanish. It merely shifts. You see it in the fidgeting hands of businessmen, the restless tapping of umbrellas, and the occasional burst of spontaneous whistling in public parks. There are stories of people sneaking back to the apothecary for just a drop of the old stuff. But for most, the thrill is gone, replaced by a hesitant curiosity about what life is like when you're not living at double speed. Doctors breathe a sigh of relief. Their waiting rooms no longer filled with patients complaining of nerves on the loose or accidentally painting the sitting room at 3 a.m. The reformers celebrate, a little smugly, while the old guard grumbles about the death of British vigour. New fads rise to fill the void: meditation circles, organised birdwatching, and a suspiciously popular brand of sleepy tea with questionable ingredients, possibly just chamomile and wishful thinking. With the city's pulse slowing, nostalgia creeps in. People look back on the wild days with a mixture of embarrassment and pride. Do you remember the time Lady Willoughby tried to invent the indoor bicycle race? I do. And I still can't look at a hat rack without shuddering. The stories get told and retold, each time a little funnier, a little more forgiving. And so London moves forward, cautiously perhaps, but with a new appreciation for the gentle rhythm of ordinary days. The high may have faded, but the city finds comfort in the calm. For the first time in years, you might even sleep through the night. Or at least most of it. Because even after the wildest ride, the hardest crash, and the strangest experiment, life goes on. And sometimes, it's nice to remember what normal actually feels like, even if it's a little quieter and just a bit less interesting. You awaken from your time travel dream to find the modern world full of child-proof bottles, warning labels, and caffeine-free tea. Cocaine is now a Schedule II controlled substance. But nostalgia for Victorian energy drinks lingers. And your local pharmacy's coffee is suspiciously strong. The present feels both comfortingly dull and faintly disappointing. You wander into your kitchen, opening the medicine cabinet to discover a battalion of safety seals and more legal disclaimers than actual medicine. Do not exceed recommended dose, the bottles warn. Consult your physician before enjoying life. The cold remedies now feature 10-point font side effects. You find yourself quietly grateful and slightly alarmed that none of them claim to cure heartbreak, ennui, or the vapors. Gone are the days when a trip to the apothecary might end with a complimentary life crisis and a handwritten poem. Your pharmacist now wears a crisp white coat and refuses to hand over anything stronger than ibuprofen without 3 forms of ID and a small blood sample. Behind the counter, rows of boxes boast science-backed formulations. Extra gentle formula, daytime, nighttime, and anytime relief, and melatonin not to be taken with existential dread. But echoes of the Victorian craze remain. Just look at the energy drinks aisle. Neon cans promise Monster Energy, Total Focus, and Hyper Tiger Mango Blitz. The ingredients are technically legal, but you'd be forgiven for wondering if they aren't just the latest batch of invigorating cordial with better branding and more vowels. There's always one friend who claims that a certain brand gives him the power to finish his taxes and rearrange the garage in a single afternoon. The spirit of 1884 lives on, albeit in a recyclable aluminum can. There's a nostalgia, too, for the absurd optimism of Victorian medicine. A longing for simpler times when a cure could be mixed up in the back room and sold with a firm handshake and a sly wink. The wellness industry thrives on this old magic. Herbal teas that promise to restore your aura, adaptogenic powders for modern hustle, and detox kits that look suspiciously like the spring tonics of yesteryear. Everyone wants to feel special, revived, a little bit superhuman, ideally before their next Zoom call. Meanwhile, modern medicine is a marvel of precision and caution. The list of banned substances is longer than your aunt's last holiday newsletter. There's no miracle elixir for sale, just a carefully regulated array of choices. Your doctor, probably less mustachioed than his Victorian predecessor, talks about risk factors and evidence-based outcomes. Gone are the days of 3 heartbeats and spontaneous poetry, replaced by biometric apps and a polite reminder to drink more water. Still, the ghost of Victorian energy lingers in your local coffee shop. You watch the barista grind beans with the intensity of someone fueling a revolution. There's a new triple shot on the menu, and nobody asks what's in it. You sip, and for a fleeting moment, your pulse races and your mind starts listing possible side hustles. Some things, it seems, never really change. Perhaps the greatest legacy is our modern skepticism. No one takes a new supplement without Googling side effects, reading reviews, and consulting 3 different relatives. Grandparents chuckle over tales of the stuff they used to sell at the chemist, but keep a well-guarded stash of honey, lemon, and just in case, a bottle of something with a label so faded that only the bravest dare sample it. The next time you reach for your over-the-counter allergy relief or hesitate over an energy shot, remember, you're part of a long tradition, a tradition of hope, hustle, and the occasional lapse in judgment. Whether it's a brightly colored bottle, a wellness tonic, or just an extra strong cup of tea, you're still chasing a bit of that Victorian spark. Safely, legally, mostly. So, close the medicine cabinet and count your blessings and your warning labels. The past is full of wild ideas, questionable cures, and the relentless pursuit of energy. The present, by comparison, offers a slower pace, a safer remedy, and maybe, just maybe, a good night's sleep. If you can resist the triple espresso, that island. Victorian dentistry is a wild ride. You duck into a dentist's office hoping for a toothache remedy and find yourself handed a glass of stimulating cordial before he pokes your gums with a cocaine-laced swab. The result? You can suddenly feel your teeth and the secrets of the universe. The dentist, wide-eyed and unnervingly enthusiastic, offers to pull 3 teeth for the price of 1. You decline and run home before he invents fluoride. You might have hoped for a straightforward appointment, a quick look, a gentle pat on the shoulder, a reminder to brush. But in Victorian London, dentistry is less a medical profession and more an experiment in controlled chaos. The waiting room is a jumble of mismatched chairs, nervous patients, and a lingering aroma of clove oil and bravado. A girl in pigtails gnaws absently on a licorice root, while her father reads a pamphlet titled The Modern Mouth: How to Keep It and Why. Behind the door, your dentist, Dr. Barnabas Periwinkle, DDS, OBE, and likely a member of the Society for Adventurous Medicine, prepares for your procedure with a zeal bordering on the theatrical. He greets you with a handshake firm enough to realign your molars, then launches into an enthusiastic explanation of his latest pain-reducing breakthrough. Before you can object, you're handed a cordial with the kick of a freight train and a mysterious aftertaste that suggests the presence of at least 2 forbidden spices. Marvelous stuff. This, he declares, swirling a bottle filled with what looks suspiciously like lemon syrup and liquid lightning. You'll barely feel a thing, except, of course, a greater sense of purpose. He dons a pair of magnifying spectacles so large they nearly blot out his face, then rummages through a tray of gleaming tools, each more medieval than the last. There are hooks, mirrors, pliers, and one contraption that appears to double as a nutcracker. The swab comes next. Cocaine. Applied with the gusto of a man who reads medical journals for the recipes. As your mouth goes numb and your brain lights up like the Crystal Palace, Dr. Periwinkle chats amiably about dental science, continental innovations, and the upcoming Society Ball, where he plans to unveil the world's first portable tooth powder dispenser. You nod, but your tongue is a stranger in your own mouth, and you can now recite the alphabet backward, twice as fast. Procedures proceed at breakneck pace. Cavities are filled with a compound so experimental it has its own warning label, may cause gleaming. Extractions are accompanied by cheerful humming and offers of a discount if you agree to a testimonial. Just a sentence, or perhaps a sonnet. If you hesitate, Doctor, Periwinkle attempts to distract you with a demonstration of his patented self-operating flossing apparatus, which consists mostly of gears, string, and a lot of hope. Not all patients are as fortunate. You overhear the story of old Mrs. Tilbury, who came in for a cleaning and left with a full set of gold-capped molars and the conviction that she could sing opera. The dentist's reputation grows, part healer, part showman, all enthusiasm. He prescribes his signature calm-down elixir for nervous patients, which turns out to be sherry with a drop of essence of adventure. Even the staff are swept up in the excitement. The dental nurse, pocketing samples of invigorating mouthwash, hums a march as she polishes the spit bowl. The bell on the door rings ceaselessly. A parade of the curious, the hopeful, and the chronically toothsome, each eager for the latest innovation, the newest promise, or just a glimpse of the legendary tooth powder fireworks. When your visit is over, you stumble out into the daylight, teeth tingling, hands shaking, and with a complimentary pamphlet on preventing the melancholy molar. You promise yourself you'll stick to softer foods, brush twice daily, and never again accept a cordial from anyone in a starched white coat. The secrets of the universe might have to wait, but at least your smile is dazzling, if a little bit too wide. Congratulations, you've survived Victorian dentistry, where the cure is almost as exhilarating as the disease. And just think, next time, he's promised you a demonstration of the painless root canal. Sleep tight. And remember to floss. Cocaine has hit the transport system. London's railways buzz with passengers discussing philosophy at 110 miles per hour, mentally, if not physically. Porters dash between platforms with suspicious energy, and the timetable becomes a polite suggestion. You wonder if the trains are actually running faster, or if everyone's just hallucinating their own punctuality. At Paddington Station, the mood is electric, if a bit erratic. Travellers pace the concourse with wide eyes and luggage in tow, speaking in bursts about the future of industry, the meaning of life, and the merits of the latest tonic. The clatter of boots on tile is interrupted only by the shrill whistle of an engine, signalling yet another train about to depart. Though no one can quite remember to where, the ticket office is a scene of controlled chaos. Queues stretch and swirl, nobody standing still. First class to Brighton, third class to Birmingham, and one round trip to the edge of reason, please, the passengers declare. The ticket clerks work with remarkable speed, hands flying, eyes darting, pausing only to sip from inconspicuous flasks labelled tea. Quotation marks, absolutely necessary. On the platforms, porters race each other, ostensibly to deliver luggage, but occasionally just for the sheer joy of motion. You watch as one young man, high on restorative salts, sprints the length of the station with 4 carpet bags, a poodle, and what appears to be an ornamental shrub. No one questions this. The other porters cheer him on, placing side bets on whether he'll vault the umbrella stand without breaking a sweat. Trains come and go with relentless, sometimes baffling, frequency. The morning flyer to Manchester is gone before anyone realizes it was ever there. The express to nowhere, in particular, leaves twice daily, on alternate Tuesdays. Punctuality is more a matter of consensus than of clocks. Was the 10:10 early, or were we all just early together? One gentleman asks, consulting a pocket watch spinning slightly on its own axis. Inside the carriages, conversation hums at a dizzying pitch. Philosophers argue about metaphysics between sips of traveller's cordial. An entire compartment hosts a debate on the ethics of railway sandwiches. The consensus, deliciously risky. The dining car offers stimulating refreshments, guaranteed to make you miss your stop by at least 2 stations. Somewhere between Euston and the outskirts, a group of businessmen sketch business models on the windows, convinced that vertical integration and horizontal napping are the future of commerce. Ladies' compartments are abuzz with talk of fashion, philosophy, and the potential for tea parties at 70 miles an hour. The sound of laughter and the occasional accidental song burst through the thin walls. Conductors, those unsung heroes of the rails, do their best to maintain order. They announce stops with a flourish, all change, for excitement on Thames, and attempt to corral the passengers back to their original seats, often with limited success. The lost property office is inundated with gloves, monogrammed flasks, unfinished philosophical treatises, and, inexplicably, 3 live ducks. Delays are taken in stride, or, more accurately, in leaps and bounds. A half-hour late? No matter. The mood is buoyant, with passengers breaking into impromptu races down the corridor, just to keep the blood moving. The station master offers apologies, due to unforeseen enthusiasm on the part of the engineers. Nobody minds. The adventure is half the point. Even after arrival, the energy lingers. You exit into the street, heart racing, brain buzzing, and somehow convinced you have time to write a novel before supper. London's railways, once the domain of soot and slow progress, are now a wild experiment in collective momentum. You realize you may never know if the trains were truly faster, or if the passengers simply willed themselves forward with enough zeal to move the earth. Either way, you've survived the Victorian commute, half journey, half fever dream, and entirely unforgettable. In the world of Victorian fashion, nothing says cutting edge like bloodshot eyes and an unsteady gait. Department stores advertise refreshing powders for the modern woman. You attend a soiree where the latest accessory is a jewel-encrusted snuff spoon, and realize the only thing more alarming than the new styles is the energy with which people explain them. It's the season of exuberant elegance, and London's social scene is abuzz with new looks, new rules, and new ways to accessorize a slight tremor. The grand windows of Bond Street gleam with mannequins in the latest invigorated ensembles. Bustles designed for brisk pacing waistcoats with extra pockets for all your patent medicines, and hats so tall they might double as storage for emergency tonic bottles. Everywhere, there's talk of the look. For gentlemen, the ideal is a certain wild-eyed intensity, a gaze that says, "I haven't blinked since Tuesday, and I could recite the Magna Carta at any moment." For ladies, fashion editors insist on fresh-faced vibrancy, achievable with 2 dabs of rouge and a mild stimulant, and sleeves wide enough to conceal a small apothecary. Complexion as lively as a May morning, the magazines promise. Though the fine print warns of occasional jaw clenching, department stores jump on the trend, launching restorative powder counters next to the glove section. Sales assistants glide over, offering samples. "Madam, may I suggest our new peppermint pick? Me? Up? Very Parisian. And just the thing for afternoon ennui." The men's department features stamina salts for the active lifestyle, and evening invigorator, now with more verve. The mannequins, for their part, look startled, as if unsure what century they've woken up in. Soirees and garden parties are showcases for the daring and the drowsy alike. Invitations boast, dancing until dawn. Special guest, the city's most animated milliner. You arrive to find a crowd buzzing, sometimes literally, about the latest accessory. Jewel-encrusted snuff spoons, bejeweled flasks, and fans lined with discreet sachets of society sparkle. Ladies show off matching powder cases and handkerchiefs, monogrammed with helpful reminders, "Take with tea, for emergency only." The conversation is a blur of trends and tips. "You must try the new Bluebell blend," Lady Marchmont confides. "It pairs wonderfully with midnight brandy and a brisk constitutional." Across the room, a dapper young viscount extols the virtues of morning tonic as a hair product, his coiffure holding strong despite the subtle tremor in his left hand. Someone claims the Duchess of Wexford's dazzling complexion is thanks to South American sun water. You wonder privately if she's just spent a week in a darkened room with a cucumber. There are, of course, downsides to the new look. The social season brings more fainting couches and an uptick in restful retreats. Fashion columns begin to offer advice. To avoid the jitters, match every powder with a cup of warm milk and 10 minutes of controlled breathing. Milliners start sewing lavender sachets into their hats, hoping to combat both the aroma of tonics and the occasional feint from over-enthusiastic waltzing. The fashion press is relentless. To be truly chic, writes the Ladies' Gazette, one must embrace the entire experience. The garments, the energy, the dazzling unpredictability. Illustrations show proper snuff etiquette, delicate, never desperate, and new ways to tie a cravat without knocking over your neighbor's tea. As midnight nears, the party slows, just a bit. Guests lounge on velvet settees, eyes bright, hands fidgeting with brooches and powder compacts. There is laughter, gossip, and the unmistakable sense that everyone is waiting for someone to invent a new sensation. The hostess announces a contest. Best decorative accessory concealing a medicinal secret. The winner, inevitably, is the lady with a brooch that doubles as a snuff box and a locket containing an emergency calming powder. You leave the soiree with a head full of style tips, a handful of samples, and a suspicion that true elegance is knowing when to say no, though in this crowd, that might still be a season or two away. Congratulations. You've survived Victorian fashion at its most energized, where style is contagious, nerves are in vogue, and the accessories are, frankly, the life of the party. And so, as the fog settles over the gaslit streets of Victorian London and the last clink of a teacup fades into silence, you can finally close your eyes and let the world of the 1880s drift quietly into memory. Tonight, you survived the great cocaine craze of an age when pharmacies doubled as party supply stores and every polite social gathering threatened to turn into an interpretive dance competition. You've run laps with Victorian toddlers, out-chatted aristocrats at tea, dodged dentists with way too much enthusiasm, and seen the inner workings of a society powered by more than just ambition. Through the dizzying highs and the spectacular crashes, you've witnessed a city's desperate, inventive, occasionally ridiculous pursuit of happiness, one teaspoon at a time. It's easy to laugh at the past, but the truth is, every era has its strange remedies and wild experiments. The Victorians just happened to write theirs in very loopy handwriting on little brown bottles. Their struggles were real, the exhaustion, the uncertainty, the need to feel alive, even if it meant chasing the next big cure down a rabbit hole of side effects. So tonight, as you tuck into your bed, hopefully prescription-free, with only a hint of caffeine in your system, maybe take a moment to thank your ancestors for muddling through centuries of questionable medicine, social panic, and unregulated energy drinks, so you could enjoy the miracle of sleep without a racing heart, or a visit from Dr. Feelgood. Because if history proves anything, it's that people will try almost anything to get by, to feel better, and to keep going, even if it means inventing the world's first all-night pharmacy rave. We are stubborn, hopeful, and occasionally absurd, but that's what makes us, well, human. So let yourself drift off, knowing that in the great, tangled story of humanity, you're part of the first generation that gets to laugh, relax, and sleep safely through the night. Sweet dreams, and I'll see you in the next bedtime story.